see. Come on in. Alicia, we can dance in the street dance, okay? That's good. Because it's okay. I think it's good.
It is nearly midnight, yet Kabukicho is still glowing as if the night has only just begun. Tourists come here to take photographs, search for unfamiliar experiences, and discover a side of Tokyo that seemingly never sleeps. But wait, behind those dazzling neon signs are women who did not come here as visitors. They came to work, to repay debts, to search for affection. And sometimes, sadly, they simply wanted someone to remember their name. One of those women is Yuko's daughter. 3 years ago, the 24-year-old believed she had met the perfect man. But she had no idea that this seemingly romantic encounter was about to open a door she still has not been able to walk back through. In this video, we will look beyond the glamorous surface of Tokyo's most famous entertainment district, not to judge the women who work here, and not to turn their lives into a sensational story. We will examine how Kabukicho operates, how a seemingly romantic relationship can become millions of yen in debt, and why the line between personal choice and coercion can sometimes become almost impossible to see. It sounds difficult to believe, doesn't it? But this is not only a story about the sex industry. It is also a story about money, loneliness, and a form of affection measured by the price of expensive bottles of champagne. If you want to discover real stories about women from around the world, subscribe and join us on this journey. Every video follows one life, and every life is a story worth hearing. Yuko's daughter met a man through a dating application. They were close in age, and both were university students. He told her that he was studying medicine. To her, it seemed like the beginning of a completely ordinary relationship. A conversation, a date, then came the caring messages every day. But there was something she did not yet know. The man was not only a student, he was also working as a host in Kabukicho. A host club is a venue where female customers pay to drink, talk, and receive attention from attractive male hosts. From the outside, it may appear that the club is simply selling alcohol and time. But in reality, what often brings customers back is the feeling of intimacy, the feeling of being understood, the feeling that they are more special than everyone else. The man told her that he was doing this work to save money and pursue his dreams. And of course, Yuko's daughter believed him. She began visiting the club where he worked. At first, the cost may have felt like nothing more than the price of an evening's entertainment. Nothing seemed particularly unusual. Then came the messages asking how she was doing, the compliments, the words that made her believe she was different from the other customers. And this is where everything began to change. Every time she returned, the bill grew larger. According to Yuko, her daughter eventually accumulated debts worth millions of yen. She left university and entered the sex industry to earn enough money to repay them. It is difficult to believe, isn't it? But the most painful and confusing part for her mother was not the amount of money involved. It was the fact that her daughter remained emotionally attached to the man. So why didn't she simply walk away? To answer that question, we must understand what is truly being sold inside a host club. Alcohol inside a host club can be extremely expensive. But customers are not paying only for the drinks. They are paying to be heard, to be called by name, to have a man remember their birthday, text them in the morning, and ask one very simple question: have you eaten today? To many people, that may sound like an ordinary question. But to someone experiencing loneliness, it can mean far more than we might imagine. However, there is something we need to make clear. Not every woman who visits a host club is naive or being deceived. For some women, it is simply a form of entertainment with clearly defined boundaries. They understand that they are purchasing an experience and they spend only what they can afford. Researcher Chiwawa Sasaki, who has studied life in Kabukicho for many years, argues that it would be inaccurate to portray every female customer as a victim without the ability to make her own choices. From her perspective, some women feel safer in a relationship where the price and expectations have already been clearly established. They can choose the person they want to meet, they can choose the distance they want to maintain, and they can choose when the relationship comes to an end. This is part of the reality that is often overlooked. Not every host club operates in the same way. Not every host coerces his customers. And not every woman who walks through those doors loses control of her decisions. The problem begins when a commercial experience is deliberately presented as genuine love. Some hosts remain in almost constant contact with their customers. They send messages in the morning, they call at night, They may even promise a serious relationship in the future. They can make a woman believe that if she spends more money, the man she loves will become the club's #1 host. And do you know what happens next? Each bottle of champagne is no longer merely a drink. It becomes proof of love. She is not spending money because she wants the alcohol. She is spending money because she wants to prove that her feelings are real. And that is the moment when debt begins to take hold. For many years, a system known as urikakekin allowed customers to receive services first and pay at a later date. It operated almost like a personal line of credit provided directly by the club. Even without enough money, a customer could still order alcohol. The sale would be credited to her chosen host. The party would continue. The music would keep playing. Everyone would keep smiling. But the money did not disappear. It was simply waiting for the day when payment became due. And when that deadline arrived, gentle affection could quickly turn into pressure. Some women received constant messages demanding payment. Others were threatened with having the club contact their families. In more serious cases, women were pressured to find work in the sex industry in order to repay their bills. Just think about that for a moment. What appeared to be an enjoyable night could become the first step in a closed cycle. Attention leads to spending. Spending leads to debt. Debt leads to work that promises fast money. The money earned is then returned to the club, and the cycle begins again. But what is the most frightening part? The woman may not always believe that she is being coerced. If she believes the host genuinely loves her, earning money to repay the debt may feel like a sacrifice she is making for love. She may believe that she is helping him, that once this debt has been paid, everything will become better again, that their relationship is real. Control does not always begin with violence. Sometimes it begins with a promise, an embrace, or simply a gentle message, "I need you." And sometimes those 3 words are enough to make someone stay. Only a short distance from Kabukicho's crowded main streets lies Okubo Park. During the day, it may look like an ordinary small park in the middle of Tokyo. But when darkness falls, the scene begins to change. On the streets surrounding the park, increasing numbers of women have been observed waiting for customers. In Japan, they are sometimes described using a slang expression that roughly means standing women. But let us pause for a moment. Behind that seemingly simple expression are many very different lives. Some need money to cover their living expenses. Some choose to work independently. Some no longer have a safe place to return to. And others say they need money to continue visiting host clubs or to repay debts they have already accumulated. According to figures released by Tokyo Police in 2023, most of the women arrested for soliciting customers around this area were in their 20s. A significant number said their reasons for earning money were connected to host clubs or similar forms of entertainment. At first, those figures may sound shocking, but numbers cannot tell the story of an entire life. They cannot tell us how long a woman has been standing outside. They cannot tell us whether she has eaten dinner. They cannot tell us whether she has a safe place to sleep when the night is over. And they cannot reveal how much money actually remains in her hands after paying for a room, intermediaries, or outstanding debts. Looking from the outside, many people ask a very simple question: why doesn't she just stop? But that question overlooks so much. The debt she cannot repay, her emotional dependency, the shame she feels about facing her family, her fear of being judged, and the feeling that there may no longer be a place for her in the life she once knew. For Yuko's daughter, the debt did not only pull her away from university. Step by step, it also pulled her away from her family. At first, it may have been a single unanswered phone call, then several days without coming home, and eventually, weeks passed without her mother knowing where she was. And just imagine that sometimes, the most painful thing for a mother is not knowing that her child may be in danger. It is not knowing whether her child still wants to be found. Japan has had a prostitution prevention law since 1956. However, the law defines prohibited sexual intercourse relatively narrowly, while the adult entertainment industry exists in many different forms. The result is an extremely complicated legal gray area. Some sexual services operate within regulated frameworks. Other activities remain prohibited. Public solicitation on the street can also result in arrest. But here is what deserves closer attention. For a long time, the law focused primarily on the actions of the women standing on the streets. Far fewer people questioned the financial and emotional systems that may have brought them there. Who created the debt? Who profits from the money they earn? And can a decision still be considered truly voluntary when it is made under the pressure of debt, threats, and emotional manipulation? These questions became increasingly urgent as more families reported that unethical host clubs had pushed their daughters into enormous debts. In response to growing public pressure, Japan began tightening its regulations on the industry. In May 2025, Japan's National Diet approved stricter rules intended to prevent manipulative business practices in host clubs. Practices such as misleading customers about prices, using romantic promises to pressure them into spending, or encouraging them to enter the sex industry to repay debts, became key targets of enforcement. This was an important change. It shifted part of the attention away from the indebted woman and toward the people and businesses that may have exploited her debt. But wait, can a new law alone really break the entire cycle? The law can prevent a host from deceiving customers about prices. It can punish threats and coercion. It can also force clubs to accept greater responsibility for their business practices. But the law cannot send a caring message to a lonely person at 2 o'clock in the morning. It cannot replace the feeling of being loved that a woman believes she has found. And it cannot immediately repair a family relationship that has been damaged over many years. The law may close one door that leads to exploitation. But for someone to truly walk away, she must still see a safe place waiting on the other side. When people discuss women in the sex industry, the debate is often divided between two opposing views. One side sees them entirely as victims. The other insists that everything is the result of personal choice. But real life is rarely that simple. A woman may decide to enter this work herself, while that decision is still shaped by her economic circumstances. She may voluntarily return to a host club, even though her emotions have been influenced by a carefully designed business system. She may understand that the host is working for money, and yet deep inside, she may still hope that their relationship is the exception. Perhaps he truly loves her. Perhaps his promises are not entirely false. Perhaps if she tries a little harder, everything will end the way she once imagined. And that is precisely what makes this story so complicated. The ability to choose does not necessarily disappear in a single moment. It can narrow little by little. First comes a purchase beyond her financial means. Then comes a promise. Next comes the debt. After that come the messages applying pressure. Eventually, every remaining path appears more difficult than the one she is already walking. Imagine a room with many doors. At first, every door is open, but each decision, each debt, and each threat closes another one. Eventually, only a single path remains. At that point, can we still call it a choice? Or is it coercion created step by step, so slowly, that even the person inside may not recognize it? If we describe every woman as a victim, we may deny her voice and her ability to make her own decisions. We may turn her into a passive character in her own story. But if we simply say it was her choice, we may hide the manipulation, violence, and exploitation that may also be present. A person can make her own choices while still being restricted by circumstances she did not create. She can love someone while also being exploited by him. She can understand that a relationship is harmful and still not feel strong enough to leave. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But human beings are filled with contradictions like these. The truth rarely exists entirely on one side. It lies in the difficult tossy space between choice and coercion, and it is within that space that these women are most easily forgotten by society. We judge them for staying, but we rarely ask what made leaving feel so frightening. From the outside, the solution may appear simple. Stop visiting the club, block the host's telephone number, leave the current job, and go home. But for someone trapped inside the cycle, each of those steps may feel like abandoning an entire life she has built over months or even years. Leaving means accepting that the relationship she believed in may not have been love, that the promises of a future together may have been part of the job, and that all the money she spent will never produce the ending she was waiting for. Psychologically, people often find it difficult to abandon something after investing enormous amounts of money, time, and emotion in it. The more we lose, the more we may want to try one final time to prove that everything we have already sacrificed was not meaningless. Just one more night, one more bottle of champagne, one final payment, and then perhaps he will keep his promise. But every time that hope fails to become reality, facing the truth becomes even more painful. Alongside emotional dependency are very practical barriers. A woman may no longer have any savings. She may have left university or lost her job. She may lack identification documents, stable housing, or a functioning relationship with her family. She may also fear being found by creditors, having her work exposed, or seeing private images used against her. Even if her family's door remains open, shame may prevent her from returning. She may ask herself, how will my mother look at me? Will my family still see me as their daughter? After everything that has happened, do I still deserve their help? That is why support cannot begin only with the words you need to leave. It must begin with something else. You have somewhere safe to go. Someone attempting to escape this cycle may need emergency accommodation, legal advice, debt assistance, physical and mental health care, an opportunity to return to education or find different employment. And just as importantly, she needs someone willing to listen without turning her story into an accusation. Because sometimes, what keeps a person from leaving is not love for the individual exploiting her. It is the fear that once she leaves, she will have no one at all. If we want to help someone escape, we cannot merely destroy the old relationship. We must help her build a new life that feels safe enough to move toward. For Yuko, every discussion about economics, psychology, or law eventually leads back to a single question: will her daughter come home? No one can answer that question with certainty, and no one can decide on the young woman's behalf when she must leave. According to the mother's account reported by the media, her daughter remained emotionally attached to the man who introduced her to the host club. For Yuko, that attachment created both pain and helplessness. She could warn her daughter, she could plead with her, she could seek help from the police, lawyers, or support organizations, but she could not enter her daughter's mind and erase the emotions that had formed there. So what can a mother still do? Sometimes, the only thing she can do is keep a door open. That does not mean accepting exploitation. It does not mean continuing to repay debts that have no apparent end. And it does not mean pretending that everything is normal. Keeping the door open means allowing her daughter to know that if she wants to return one day, someone will still be willing to listen. Not immediately asking, why did you do this? But first asking, are you safe? Not saying I warned you, but saying we will deal with this one step at a time. Coming home may not happen in a dramatic moment. It may begin with a very short message, a telephone call in the middle of the night, a request to stay for only one evening, or a seemingly ordinary question, Mom, are you still awake? And if that moment comes, what matters most is not who was right in the past. What matters is whether the young woman can walk through the door without fearing that she will immediately be pushed back outside. We do not know how the story of Yuko's daughter will end. Perhaps Yuko does not know either, but she continues to wait. Because for a mother, hope does not always mean believing that everything will become better tomorrow. Sometimes, hope is simply the decision not to close the door today.